This is Performance Delivered, Insider Secrets for Digital Marketing Success with Stefan Horst.
Welcome back to Performance Delivered, Insider Secrets to Marketing Success, the podcast where we dive into what's driving results in today's marketing landscape. I'm Ximena. I'm the head of marketing here at Symphonic, and I'm subbing in for Stefan. And today we're exploring something that's quietly shaking up the foundation of SEO. The metrics that we've long relied on, like CTR, traffic, or even clicks themselves, are starting to lose their meaning. With the rise of zero-click search and AI-powered results, we need to ask ourselves, are we measuring the right things, or are we stuck optimizing for a version of the internet that no longer exists? To help us reframe this conversation, I'm joined once again by two brilliant guests from our last episode. First, we have Lindsie, who's our head of SEO here at Symphonic, and she's very passionate about helping our clients adapt their KPIs to today's search landscape. She's joined by Andreas, who's the founder of Artois and a leading voice in AI-driven search, performance measurement, and advanced analytics. Let's dive in, guys. What do we actually mean by zero-click search, and how is AI accelerating this shift?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take that one. I'll start, and you can argue with me, Andreas, if you disagree on what this. So I think this term is thrown around a ton right now, honestly, to some level of fear tactic that people aren't clicking ever at all anymore in Google. But what zero click means is just people are getting their information without having to get to a website as frequently anymore. So whether this is in ChatGPT or using AI overviews, whatever it happens to be, people are gathering content and context without having to visit 10 sites to do it. So it doesn't mean that the entire internet is going to zero click. It means that there is just a lot more zero click actions that are happening in places like Google.
Yeah, I think following on from what you've just said, Lindsie, is that whatever clicks you do get are going to be of much higher value than
100%.
before. So yeah, there's just a lot of interaction that's going on within the walled gardens of search, be it Google or LLMs, and there's a lot of brand awareness. If you're playing the AI search game correctly, there's a lot of brand awareness that's being generated on your behalf and positioning you as a potential partner when the buyer is finally buyer ready and ready to click through. The value of that click is much higher. So there's a lot more to play for. There's a lot more at stake. AI is definitely picking out the winners and leaving out the losers in search.
And digging deeper into that, how do you think that AI is influencing the way that people are searching during the buy-in cycle, like not just at the start? Is it impacting how marketers think about content, discovery, and tracking?
Yeah, is it all right if I take this, Lindsie?
Go for it.
Cheers. So the thing is, the nature of AI, we've seen prior to AI search coming to the fore that there was a lot of noisy general SEO playbook guide content polluting the web, so much so The Verge even wrote an article about how SEOs ruin the internet, which, although it took a bit of a derogatory tone, I think we can all accept there was some modicum of truth to it. And I think what we're seeing now is the threshold quality bar for content has been raised a lot higher because people are typing in mini essays about what it is they want, how they want it, who they are, and therefore the answers need to be a lot more contextual. But what it means is that in order to have your brand recommended by AI, your content really needs to line by line fight for its life in order to justify its inclusion. And what I mean by that is it really has to provide that information gain more than it ever did before, if it ever did before. And if you think about how AI now, any content, any brand it's going to recommend that content, what really needs to happen AI wants to get smarter, okay? So that means that if you want your brand to be recommended, your content has to be good enough to make AI think that there's value to be added to its model for retraining in order to make its AI models even smarter than it was before. And if you can achieve that, then your brand is going to be recommended all over the place.
And I
for
think
what you do, of course.
Yeah, well, and I think just to build on that in say things more specific even, is like, we need to just create great content for humans. We can't just create garbage. And I do think SEO for years has just been, if we just write a listicle about anything, we're going to get traffic. And if we just do that over and over again, we're going to win, and our KPIs are going to just go through the roof because all we care about is traffic. And this is kind of shifting what we're looking at, and the traffic we're getting, like you said, has to be fought for, right? It has to be good. And I think it's also a re-education of our clients. I had a conversation today with somebody that's like, well, our traffic is down. And I'm like, yeah, but your leads are up double. So that traffic that is coming is better traffic than what it was before. Like, I don't care. And that's, a piece of that re-education of like, it doesn't matter if the traffic is down, because that quality is really there. So how do we measure quality versus quantity?
Right. Lindsie, and since you're even giving this great example of clients, but also teams are still prioritizing traffic over CTR. So what should we actually be measuring instead of that?
Well, I thought that was a great example that Linda gave, because something I saw and reported with a client recently is that we saw that although the overall site traffic was like 70% down, and this was across all of them, SEO or organic search, if you want to call it that, was only down by 25%. So that means it's already achieved a bunch above benchmark. And also the other interesting statistic, which I thought was very telling, was that the share of lead generation increased from 2.52% to over 10.4%. So that means we've 4x'd in 1 month the share of the share of the channel share of leads generated in 1 month, and that's massive. And I think looking at what benchmark is and looking at the growth in the share of leads contributed overall versus other channels, two very good metrics among many others, I'm sure.
Well, and I think we could even from a measurement standpoint look at it back to that kind of buying stage. Like, okay, where are we in that very high education piece, whether it's branded impressions? Are we getting eyeballs where people can see us? Like, that's all pretty light, but it tells us where we are in that kind of top of funnel in a lot of spaces. And then we get kind of in the middle, which is clicks. And I think we have to accept a new normal to some level of clicks, and every client's going to have a new normal. And then there's what matters, which is like money in your pockets. Clients are not investing in SEO because it feels good. I mean, some of them are, I guess, but really they should do it because they need to make more money, whether that's leads or sales via e-com. Like, we are trying to increase the bottom line of a business. So that is what we need to care about. And I think if you're working with an agency that's just reporting out on clicks or impressions, you're probably not getting the whole story, and you're likely not getting the return that you could be if we were looking at it from that kind of end of the process perspective.
Do you think it would be helpful to also now, since we're moving into this new era, to sort of benchmark the data that we had before with what we're getting now, which we know that we're getting less clicks. We know they're more valuable, but, to do some sort of kind of comparison to moving forward?
I think we would need to do it industry-wide, right? I think we would need to look at a market and try to understand where we are, because clients are saying we're losing traffic. It's like, yes, but if we could look at it comparatively and say, again, industry-wide, people are losing 70% theoretically, and you're losing 40%, we're winning. That sounds terrible to an executive. Nobody wants to hear that they're just losing less. But I think that's where we have to kind of benchmark is this type of business should be here, and we are here. And we just have to realign with what that means. And some of that is also trust in your partner, that they're not just lying to you because they're failing, which we're not, but this is just the way the space is today.
Yeah, the metrics have definitely changed. I mean, from the top of funnel perspective, you would be looking at how many impressions you're getting, because we've established earlier that there's a lot more interaction within the walled gardens of search before people eventually click to transact on your website. And I think you touched on a really good point earlier about, if you're not investing in SEO, well, look, AI is already here and agentic search is coming in the future. So if you're nowhere today, you'll definitely be nowhere tomorrow. There's no reason.
Right.
And, when you think about how AI has even more power than a traditional search engine to recommend your brand, there's no more powerful customer than a pre-sold customer. Why? Because if they're pre-sold, they'll be less price sensitive. They'll buy quicker. They'll decide quicker whether to buy off you or not. They're more likely to be retained longer. They're more likely to be highly more enjoyable to work with. So if AI is doing the pre-selling for you, that's, if you think about it, it's a scaled referral network. You don't even have to know these people or to have worked with these people for AI to recommend you. I mean, it's insane for people or businesses not to invest in GEO or SEO, whatever you want to call it.
This is our moment. And if you're not doing it, somebody else is. And if we can I had a question at a presentation I did this last week about what if there was this combined effort where we tried to control the conversation around a brand. How could we do that? And it's like, well, if you had SEO and PR and social and we all pushed this brand messaging about something totally new and different, I think we could control what the AI parses out and tells people, and we could test it. I think it's something where controlling the conversation is really powerful and something we can do if we do it right. And we have kind of multiple stakeholders on board.
100%. I mean, if you think about what SEO was doing, it was kind of convincing search engines what the reality was, the truth, what the reality was regarding your brand and its place within the net on its true value. Well, this is the same thing with AI and LLMs. You're, for want of a better word than poisoning AI, you're influencing AI again to the true value of your brand versus the competing alternatives for what it is you do and why your brand should be recommended as opposed to all the other competing alternatives.
So I guess I know we're here talking about zero-click metrics. That's our goal to get to today. And I think it would be interesting to hear your perspective, Andreas, on attribution of those pieces. So if we are controlling the conversation, how do we track that through the process? And what's your perspective there?
Yeah. So when I've written and coded attribution models for radio or general pathway analysis, the way it would work is it uses a thing called Markov mathematics, which is used in weather prediction. And it's basically conditional probability. So it's like, well, if the weather, let's just take the weather, for example, so if it's sunny today, what is the probability that it will be sunny tomorrow or rainy tomorrow? And so the way it works in attribution analysis is if I came from this channel, what is the probability that I will use or what is the probability I came from these other channels? Or if I was on this landing page, what is the probability that I have been on other landing pages? And you calculate all of these conditional probabilities, and eventually, after a certain number of data points, Markov tends to perform well with 10,000, if not even better, 100,000 data points, because then you got a model that converges and generalizes really well, for an unknown future. And effectively, that's the basis of a data-driven attribution model that's used in the sort of Analytics 360, if it's still called that, when trying to work out, what is the true value of a channel? Because then eventually the probabilities all add up to a percentage assigned to each channel to sort of say, well, even if you did land from, last click attribution from a Google ad, we don't want to give all of the credit to that, because we can see that from all the different 100,000 pathways, 36% of that should have gone to display or the rest of it. So I would imagine the same methodology would be applied to just include AI as a channel. We've just seen that Google Search Console are now dimensionalizing with discussions as a different type of search result. So that's where the data source would come from to fit into that overall Markov driven model.
I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit. I am an SEO person that doesn't have extensive analytical or mathematical experience, and I need to tell my CMO if we're being successful. How do I use attribution modeling in a more simplistic way to get to that information?
Depends of the size of your company. Like if you're Amazon, they'll sign it off. If you're
Okay, let's pretend they're not Amazon.
Yeah, I think you're likely to end up paying, if you can secure the budget for an impression tag based solution, and then hope for the best. That tag based solution will have the data driven attribution model to provide you the answers you seek. But I mean, even when AI, even before AI came along, most companies wouldn't even invest in an impression-based attribution model. So yeah, perhaps AI is going to force the hands of businesses seriously committed to measurement to make that investment.
What's your opinion on the standard Google Analytics attribution modeling that is provided out of the box?
Does that include the data-driven version?
Just the standard, what somebody would put on their website. We're not paying for anything extra.
Yeah, if it's not the data-driven version, then I'm not holding much hope, if I'm brutally honest. Also, the kind of attribution model that I'm most interested in is not channel-based, but more content-based, where we could see what the pathways were when people arrived on your website. When, say, they go onto an information guide that you produced, and then 2 weeks later decide to go on a commercial landing page, and then maybe 24 hours later decide to actually transact or not transact. That is the kind of attribution that I think we're missing right now.
Are there any other tools that, besides analytics, that are more AI-based that they claim to measure visibility when it comes to these models?
I feel like there's a million of them at this point that claim that they will tell us all of what we're showing up for within chat or within Perplexity or whatever. I am highly apprehensive of their ability to report on something that is not consistent, not reported out on. And so I am just very apprehensive that any of it is even close to accurate.
Yeah, I think we're a bit like in the Overture days, with Google, Yahoo, when they were partnering with Yahoo ads, and it was a bit of a Wild West, and I feel like history is repeating itself, and eventually, the technology will get better. I mean, when you look at all the sort of tools that are coming out for that promise to measure your visibility and citations within LLMs and AI, they're all coming up with methods like, turning keywords into search phrases, but these are not actual search phrases that have been used. These are just generated search phrases that people might use to find your content within LLMs. So again, it's not perfect, and it's not really, it's a bit of a supposition. So as someone who loves data, I'm not loving that.
Got it. All right. Well, if we're talking about how clicks don't necessarily tell the whole story anymore, I'm going to ask a really important question for most people who are engaging in SEO practices. So how do we connect SEO to ROI these days?
I guess I'll start this, at least from, I think what we're trying to connect the dots more and more is you can't prove that with out-of-the-box tools anymore. You can't just do it in Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics even. you have to be integrated within a CRM. We deal a lot in the B2B space, and it's all lead gen. And it's like, just because somebody fills out a form on the website, well, one, with cookie data, we maybe didn't get all those people. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't, likely not. And so we have to pull in things from whether you're using HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever the platform you're using. We have to start to tie the metrics we're tracking against, whether it's, traffic, impressions, visibility, with those dollar points throughout. And so we're building a lot of custom dashboards, helping connect these dots. And to some level, they're jumps. But to other levels, at least if we have all of that in one place, we can start to make reasonable assertions about it. Whereas if we're just looking at, Google Analytics, which I hear a lot of people just looking at Google Analytics, you're not going to get the full picture. And you're also never truly going to be able to prove that return on investment.
Yeah, I think that's quite right. In order to connect the ROI with organic search activity, it's a bit like how they teach probability at school, right? So we're taught what are the desired outcomes divided by the range of outcomes or the total outcomes possible. And one of the interesting things I found when I was first introduced to learning about probability at school was, well, although you may not have the answer to what the probability was, you do have the inverse probability. What was the inverse probability that it didn't come from organic search? And from there, you could probably work out what was the probability it didn't come from organic search. And therefore, from the total, you could work out the probability the ROI came from search. And that's how we are going about doing it for our clients.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. An interesting way to kind of look at it. And I'm sure there's a lot of marketers that may be listening out there. You don't have to be scared about probability and numbers. It's all important. I feel like sometimes analytics and all of these pieces of tracking gets overwhelming and inundating. To be able to do this, if you've never done it before, one, work with good partners that can help you through it, but also it's not as scary as it sounds. And it is possible for people to kind of learn and explore this.
It's definitely possible because the data is there. Like, for example, you do have linked ROI through ROAS on paid social, paid search, and other paid media. You do have that direct link between other channels. So therefore, that leaves you with a degree of confidence and the low margin of error of what organic search is contributing from an ROI standpoint. And again, This is arithmetic. This is not, it's not a Fourier transformation or differential equations or stuff used in rocket science or SpaceX.
Not doing anything
this
crazy.
Is stuff that is arithmetic, right? It's just really what it comes down to is, inverse desired outcome divided by a range of total outcomes. So we're good.
We can do it. We got it.
We can do it.
We can do it, marketers.
And I think I can do it. So
there you go.
There you go.
So we have the ROI data linked. We more or less have our attribution model set up. How do we use this data to present it to leadership in a way that we get buy-in to do the strategies that we want to do for SEO?
I think the number one thing is what that return on investment is. And if we can set up, you kind of said that okay, we have it all done. Well, that's the hardest part, right? Is having all that done. And if we can have that attribution build out, we can have those dots tied together. Again, at least in a strong argument of probability, getting that money is a whole lot easier when you can say, hey, if we invest X, the return is Y within X margin of error, right? If we can give that and then track against that and be responsible for that information and reporting that out, I think it's hard to say no when you have that information. The hardest part is getting there and being confident in saying it and saying you're going to actually achieve that and track against it.
100%. And I think this comes to your point earlier about benchmarking. When you're benchmarking across different sectors, it means you've got a lot more sensitivity analysis as to what those range of outcomes could be when it comes to presenting an ROI. And, since we're talking about strategy, it has to be presented against alternative options, A, to do it, A, to not do it, and what the alternative channels, it reminds me of marketing mix modeling, which for the next dollar, which is the best, which is the next channel that unlocks the most return, relative to other channels.
We're nearing towards the end of our recording, but I think I'm going to ask a question that could be a whole other episode. So stay tuned for that. But I think we could tease a little bit about what can we do beyond search. It used to be that SEO, was very focused on just Google. But now we're pulling from blogs, from, videos, from TikTok, from other podcasts like this one. So, what can we do? Should we be tapping into the broader ecosystem? Should we be staying more in Google's lane? What do you guys think?
I mean, if you're staying in Google's lane, you're going to fail at this point. I think it's becoming the most antiquated way to look at SEO, is that we are working and worshiping at the foot of Google. If we do that, we're going to fail. And so I do think that this is a whole broader conversation, but SEO cannot just be a single channel anymore and really I say SEO and I mean organic search, and that encompasses like what's happening in LLMs, what's happening in all these other places. And we have to consider all the inputs and not just a single input anymore.
Yeah, I think we've shifted from, a kind of a ranking where, there'll be lots of winners, some winners, no winners, whereas now it's win or lose, right, with AI results. And the good news is if you can crush AI search, you can absolutely crush Google and crush it in Google rather than crush Google. You can absolutely crush it in Google and Bing. And so, but that will requires an extra level of resources. It's not enough to produce content just for search. It's got to be something you would be seen alongside with sharing in your personal social channels, something that you would be proud to present to a journalist or an editor or to get people sharing. It's got to be a lot more, it can't be what is ransomware recovery. It's got to be something the world hasn't seen before to tick that information gain tick box.
Okay. Well, Lindsie, Andreas, thank you so much for coming back and help us rethink about how we measure success in this new era of AI-powered zero-click search. This is the part 2 of our AI and search series, and we're just getting started. So if you're listening and want to help shape future topics, please send us your questions, your wins, and we want to hear it all so that we can continue shaping these episodes so that they work for you and all the questions that you have about SEO and AI. So thanks everyone for tuning into Performance Delivered. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave us a review in your favorite podcast app. And to learn more about Symphonic Digital, visit us at symphonicdigital.com or an X at Symphonic HQ. See you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Performance Delivered is sponsored by Symphonic Digital. Discover audience-focused and data-driven digital marketing solutions for small and medium businesses at symphonicdigital.com.